Welcome back to the OPEX podcast where fitness is explained. On today's show, I'm rejoined by Mike Cazayoux, co-founder of Bruce Trent and president of Working Against Gravity. In this episode, Mike and I discuss training philosophy, training systems, business, and many more topics. This was another great conversation with Mike, guys. I know you'll love it. Stick with us. Mike, thank you so much for coming back on today for our part two. How have you been?
I've been great, man. And it's a fucking pleasure to be back. We had such a great conversation the first time. I don't know if you got through any of your prepared questions, but it was awesome. And I'm excited to do it again with you.
That's why we have part two today for the prepared questions. No, in my head today, I was thinking about the intro to this show and I was like, part one was very much about a lot of life stuff. We spoke a lot about, a lot about philosophy, and it was savage. It was brilliant. I absolutely loved it. And listen, if we go down that path again here today, I love it even more. But in part two, I do want to touch a little more into sort of maybe the nuts and bolts of training itself. So a question I do want to ask you is, what is your training philosophy? Now, I know you were telling me previously through some messaging when we first connected, you were like, you're not coaching as many clients as hands-on as you once were. But still, listen, you've been in the trenches. And obviously, you have coached, you have logged in hours. So the question to me is still relative. And that is, what is your coaching philosophy? And if you want me to make that a little more specific, I can. So
make it a little more specific.
Yeah. So basically, a philosophy to me is your why, whereas a training system is your how. So and we'll talk about your training system afterwards. So your training system is how you put your philosophy into action. So basically your training philosophy, I use fitness as a medium to enhance people's lives. And then your system is my assessment, my program design, my monitoring. And these are the means and methods that I use. But basically to me, a philosophy is your how, whereas system is your why, if that kind of clarifies a little more.
Yeah, thank you. One thing that I loved that has always stuck with me, and I try to incorporate this in the way that I coach and teach anything, was the first time I ever heard of Ido Portal, who, for those of you listening, is like the Buddha of human movement. He is like the pinnacle of human movement, in my opinion. The first video I ever saw of him, he said this thing. He said, human beings crave the development of movement complexity. They crave the development of movement complexity. So whether I'm teaching someone CrossFit or how to lose weight or personal development, etc., I understand that human beings want to grow. They want to learn. They want to do new and exciting things. And I come from a strength and conditioning background, like a very traditional strength and conditioning background, where everything is extremely structured and it's pretty boring. It can be very boring. And I try to incorporate keeping things fun, keeping things exciting, and keeping people doing new things. Because I think most people get into, let's use competitive fitness, for example. This is a great example. They get into it because it's just fun. But over the years, they start taking it more and more seriously. They start doing a more and more structured program. And what happens a lot is they lose that initial desire because they're not expanding. They're not doing new things, right? They're just doing the same things repetitively over and over and over. And there's absolutely a place for that. And I'm a huge proponent of that. But when we are not exploring new things, new movements, I think it can get really stale. So I try to incorporate the development of movement complexity, the development of complexity in general in whatever I'm teaching.
So would it be fair to say that, a part of your philosophy is to keep it fun and to do that, have lots of variation that facilitates further growth in people?
Yes, appropriate variation. Not variation just for the sake of variation, but structure what can be structured and then allow people to play and have fun with it.
The sort of term that always comes into my head is organized chaos.
Yes.
It's exactly. Exactly. Appropriate variation is a great way of putting it. So if we jumped into your system, then your training system, how would this look? And I suppose a way of making that question a bit more specific is, I'm a client and I want to work with you. And you can tackle this from both online or in person if you want to answer all that within the one answer here. But how does that look like? So what is the initial intake? Is there an assessment? If there is an assessment, is there a movement piece as well as the physical piece? Then with regards to training prescription, do you like to go do you like to have a macro plan and then bring that into the micro, or do you let more of the micro dictate the macro? And then in terms of monitoring and monitoring the training progress of the program, how do you go about that too?
Gotcha. So I have to give this caveat. I have not coached a single person for at least 2 years. So anything I say about this can't be a reflection on Brute or any of the people that we train, because I'm just not that guy anymore.
Yeah.
We have people that are in charge of that, and I focus more on business and mindset and things like that.
Great.
With that said, so you asked so many questions.
Yeah, I can.
What's the system? So my system is, I always start with the macro in mind first. Like what is, and to determine what the macro is, I assess people. My assessment looks like, what does their mobility, their range of motion look like? Where are their strengths? Like what energy system are they strong in? Are they a power athlete, an endurance athlete? Are there certain movements, like skills that they need to develop? So I'm looking at a bunch of different domains, if you will, in their level of fitness. And depending on what that looks like will determine their macro cycle, right? If they need to, if I'm working with, I have a specific lady in mind who came to me, she couldn't do a body weight squat. She had great flexibility, but she didn't have like the mobility and the stability to get herself into a full range of motion squat. And so what my biggest goal with her was, I want her to be able to do basic human movements very, very comfortably. So I wasn't playing around with a bunch of fancy shit. I just came up with really new and fun ways each time to develop her skills on a bodyweight squat, a push-up, a kettlebell swings, very simple things. So I'm a big fan of tempo work, especially for newcomers they don't have great body awareness. So I do a lot of slow eccentric work, a lot of isometric work, because I just want to pattern over and over and over perfect technique, so that when they go to sit down, or maybe they're playing a game in their life, they can just very comfortably mimic that perfect movement. If I were to immediately have her do 50 air squats for time, she might be able to do one sort of well, and then they all go to shit. And because our brain is constantly picking up what we're doing rather than what we're thinking, it's picking up what we're doing and saying, okay, I'm going to just make that more efficient, and I'm going to do that over and over and over and over. So I like to start people out really, really slowly and imprint perfect technique. And that could be for a air squat, a kipping pull up, a muscle up, handstand walking. I like to start really, really slowly with people and then start to speed up. And I think that's a really good metaphor for life in general.
Yeah.
So that's the basics of it. Did I cover everything you asked?
Yeah. So yeah, you look at movement, you start them off slow. In terms of just like monitoring their progression, how do you go about that? Is it just literally like, do you have any metrics that you go about? I suppose it is going to depend on the individual, if they're more novice versus someone who's maybe more higher level. But just in terms of a monitoring process, what did that look like?
Yeah, I like simple things like just a test retest. So with this lady, the test was, can you do a squat? She couldn't. And then 4 weeks later, I retested her on the same thing. I think it was like a goblet squat, and she nailed it. Right. For a more advanced athlete, it might be, how many muscle ups can you do? Or what's your 500-meter row? Or what's your, like, how far can you reach down and touch your toes?
Yeah.
Pretty simple things.
Yeah.
I've never been a very data-driven person. I get really overwhelmed having to look at a lot of data. So the way that I've found for it to be manageable for me is just very simple test and retest, which is also very motivating to them, because it shows them what they have to do to improve and move in the direction of their goal.
Big time. All right, transition from training to business, because obviously, you are the owner, founder of Brute. Take us through that journey. So how is that journey, how is that being going from a coach in the trenches to like owning like a, what currently is a very successful training company?
The first 6 months were awesome because I had really lost the passion for coaching in the online world because I just didn't have as much interaction with people. I'm a face-to-face type of person, like deep conversation type person. And the online platform didn't really lend itself to that as much. And so for the first 6 months, we hired Nick Fowler, who is our director of strength and conditioning, and he's better than I ever was, in my opinion. And so I had that off my plate and I got to do new and exciting things. After that, I started to have this feeling of insecurity because I definitely wasn't an expert coach, but I felt like a very competent coach that could get people results quickly. And all of a sudden I was doing completely new things like marketing and just being a leader of a business, right? And a bunch of similar responsibilities that I felt very incompetent. And I no longer had anything in my life that I could kind of hang my hat on and feel real confident about. And so I went through a long period of time of being very insecure, and it drove me to develop my skills in these other areas. Fast forward to about 6 months ago, I've transitioned into the role of president at Working Against Gravity, which is a nutrition coaching company. I think I mentioned that to you. And very recently, I got crystal clear for the first time in my life, like, what is my purpose for this chapter? I've always been searching for some kind of like purpose and meaning. I've gotten crystal clear about what that is for me in this chapter of my life. And that's doing personal development coaching. And I got inspired to like just make that happen. And so I decided I wanted to start with our 40 staff members. And now every single day I spend at least an hour a day developing my skills, either on coaching calls or working on a structure and framework for this personal development program, or researching about it, etc. And what I've noticed is by spending time each day, all of these things that are top of mind, I'm developing my skills more rapidly, and that confidence is coming back because I'm feeling like I'm getting better at this stuff. And it's been incredible, man. It's been a really good feeling to get that back. And it's not as hard as I thought it was, basically, to have that feeling of confidence. All I have to feel is that I have a goal that I'm shooting for, and I see myself on the path making progress. Just like that, I'm feeling confident. I'm feeling like I'm doing the right thing, and it's incredible.
What really resonated with me with what you just said there was that you were like, you used the phrase there, this current chapter in your life. And I think that's a very important point for people to realize. And it's something I've spoken with James Fitzgerald from OPEX with on a number of occasions, in that like your goals and your priorities and your core values are dynamic. Like they will change over the course of your life. Like an easy example is like, think about when we're like single men and then like we get a partner and then we get a kid and then we get a house and a mortgage. Like your priorities when you have you're married with kids.
Hopefully they change.
Yeah, hopefully they change. You know what I mean? So like, I think that's a very important takeaway. As you said there, you said, in this chapter of my life, this is where I'm at. And I think for me anyway, what I really took away from that is like, the reminder that, listen, life isn't static. It's a dynamic journey that's in continuous flux, and it's okay to be fulfilled by something for a certain period of time in your life. And then it's okay not to get fulfillment from that and to move on. Whereas a lot of people, they get this guilt that, oh, I don't really love this anymore. And they start to feel like they're not appreciative. And then they just, and like, you see it, and that behavior carries into things like they stay at a job too long, they stay in a relationship too long, they just keep doing self-detrimental habits for too long, because there's this like subconscious guilt where they're like, they feel that they're not like committing enough. They're like,
Yes.
this used to fulfill me and now it doesn't. And they get this like, I feel like I'm very ungrateful. I see this a lot too in strength and conditioning when coaches, I don't know if we spoke about this, but I've spoke about it a lot with other people. You get coaches who get this great job at a top organization. They love it for a year or two, maybe 3, maybe even 4 or 5 years. And then like they're kind of like, I don't kind of want to be here anymore. And like in one part of their brain's like, you're on a 6-figure salary, you're with this great organization. How dare you be so ungrateful? Like that's one part they're having in their head. And it's like, but it's not fulfilling them anymore. And it's a really it's just, again, that just completely resonated with me what you said there, in that, you know, this chapter of my life, think about your life as a book, and different chapters are different steps in the journey of your life. Like the key thing is that you're a dynamic organism, and it's okay that things that fulfill you at one moment in time don't fulfill you, and that's okay to move on from those. So I think that was just really resonated with me. I don't know if you have anything to add to that. No doubt you do, because you're as much as the philosopher as I am.
Well, I do want to share one thing, because I read this yesterday, and it's so spot on to what we're talking about. The owner of CD Baby, it was like the first company to allow people to put their music on a CD and sell it online. I forget his name. Anyway, he said that he's a big time entrepreneur. He sees so many like 30 something year olds, and you can expand this to 20 something year olds for sure, just trying to do everything at once, right? They're afraid to commit to one thing. So they try to say yes to every single opportunity. And that leads to them not making a lot of progress in any one area. And I think in the beginning of your career, that's necessary to kind of say yes to everything. But as you go on, it makes a lot of sense to say no to almost everything except for, you know, 1 to maybe a few key priorities. And he said, you can do anything you want in life, but you got to do one at a time. You can do anything you want, but do one at a time. And that, I read that, and this fucking light bulb just went off in my head. It was so reaffirming, because that's what I have been doing in the last couple of years. And it just gives me permission to say no to everything except for what I'm focused on right now. And if I lose interest, then I lose interest and I move on to the next thing. But it allows me to become obsessed and like really grow in one area.
Like 100%. I could not agree anymore, because that is, and I'm not just saying this because it's you I'm talking about. That's exactly my current thought process as well.
Hell yeah.
Like even with the book, The One Thing, I think a lot of people think that, you know, they misinterpret, if they haven't read it, like they misinterpret it and they, oh, you have to just do this one thing. It's like, no, he just means do the one thing at a time in the moment, and then like you can move on to another thing. So my thought process is the exact same. And I know too, and you can expand on this yourself. You get more fulfilled when you just focus in on one thing and give it 100%. And it just feels like that, even though you were only focused on this one thing, you still were doing everything, or you were getting everything back from it. I've like when you do some deep work, like I've done it when I've done some writing, particularly when I'm writing some essays, and like you get up and go for a walk and a break, and you're just so engrossed with this process, and you're just like, you love it. And it's kind of like you're walking and going, oh, the world is still kind of functioning, because I've just been so engrossed with this process. But like, just the reward you're getting from it, it's just like, it's addictive almost. But completely agree. And I don't know if you've read the book Essentialism by Greg McKeown.
One of my favorites.
Oh yeah, so like that, what we're speaking about here just reminded me of that book too. And I love his paradox of success, because that kind of reminds me of, like you saying, say yes to everything first, but then as you get older and, you know, you kind of get known for this kind of particular field or this particular area that you're a master of, your time starts to get like dragged in different directions because of the paradox of success. And he's like, you got to make sure you stay with that way that made you successful and not get dragged away. So I love that paradox of success from his book. So that kind of reminded me of that too. Your advice for business owners, because as a man now who is involved in 2 thriving businesses, Brute and Working Against Gravity, and I had the pleasure to interview your beautiful wife yesterday, Adi. What have you really learned now over the last 2 years, you know, after really digging into the business aspects, and what advice would you give to any of the business owners out there within the fitness and nutrition communities?
I was thinking about this on the car ride yesterday. The first is that you want to create massive value and over deliver for your actual customers. So many people are, get themselves in a position where they have a lot of overhead, they have to pay bills, payroll, etc., and they start focusing too much on getting new clients. And there are so many exceptions, but there are many people that start focusing too much on getting new clients, on marketing. And they forget to continue improving their product or service. What my wife has taught me above anything else in business is that if you create a service that is so good, your customers will do your marketing for you. So just as in I treat myself in terms of personal development, like I am obsessed with understanding myself and just figuring out my own brain and habits and shit. You want to be that way with your service. You want to constantly upgrade it. You want to make your customers feel taken care of at every step in their journey. You want to wow them with their experience. Don't just give them what they pay for. Wow them and give them 10 times more than they were even expecting. Then they will go out and do your marketing for you. They'll invite friends. And then occasionally you can say, hey, do you have any people like you that you would recommend me reaching out to? And that's just a really simple way of getting referrals. And what I've seen Ajay do with Working Against Gravity is she's created literally one of the most impressive referral machines I've ever seen, right? These people are just walking billboards because their bodies are transforming. But then what we do at WAG is so much more than just changing macros or something like that. That these people are, a lot of them, their whole lives change in a positive way. And they're just dying to get their friends to do it or their family because they want their lives to change too. So that's number one, just constantly upgrade it and make it just a part of your business ritual to check in with how are we connecting with our customers? What does the service look like? Constantly upgrade that thing. The second is, and this is, I don't know if it's cliche, it seems a little cliche to me, but a lot of your success in business is your ability to build relationships. So obviously what I just talked about is building and maintaining relationships with your customers, but then also building and maintaining relationships with strategic partners, right? People that are usually non-competing companies with you that you can support and point the finger to. For instance, Brute and WAG have an amazing relationship, and we point to each other on social media in a way that benefits both companies, right? And that's an easy one because I'm married. As the CEO of Brute, I was married to the CEO of WAG. So obviously I had a great relationship with her.
I hope so.
What I try to do is just become, and I don't like the word networking, and I despise like a networking event. But if I find other entrepreneurs, other business owners in the fitness industry that I really do like, I go out of my way to just become their friend. In a totally genuine way. I've had people come and stay in New Roads, Louisiana, where I grew up. We have people to our house all the time, and we're just developing genuine, authentic friendships with these people and building trust with them. And it opens up a lot of opportunities. It opens up a lot of opportunities to do business directly or just to help each other, introduce each other to our audiences. And it's been huge. That's been the number one marketing, strategy of my business career so far.
So we have two there to take away. So basically make raving fans and have strong relationships. It reminds you too, actually, of the book Raving Fans and also Tribes by Seth Godin as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely you want to make your clients walking billboards. And as you kind of alluded to there, like with Ajay and WAG, and I'm sure, no doubt, obviously with Brute too, because I see it with OPEX and other great organizations, like we're using fitness and nutrition as just the medium to change people's lives. I was speaking with the guys from Invictus, CJ Martin,
Yep.
and Tino. Speaking with CJ Martin and Tino on Monday, and that was sort of what CJ sort of alluded to, was that, like, we're using fitness purely as a medium to enhance people's lives. And I told CJ that I'd interviewed, I'm not sure, do you know who Zach Evanish is? You know Zach Evanish?
Yeah.
Yeah, great guy, legend, like, absolutely love Zach. I interviewed Zach last year for my own podcast, and Zach said something in that interview, and I loved it. And it was real, like, you need to put that on a t-shirt. And basically Zach said, what I build with people inside the gym, I wanted to transcend the walls. And I just thought, like, that was such a beautiful way to put it. Like, you're just like, it transcends the walls, it bleeds out into their lives, and it just makes them better humans. So I just thought it was savage. That's going to transcend the walls. So I love that word, transcend. I just think it's awesome. Like, but exactly, it's absolutely brilliant. Just with Brute, Mike, and I know you touched on this in our first conversation, but when was that light bulb moment where you were like, Brute, I want to do this? How did that come about?
So I stopped working at LSU. I was working as a strength and conditioning coach for their football and baseball teams. And I left that because I wasn't feeling very fulfilled by it. Mm-hmm. I was feeling very intellectually stimulated, not very fulfilled. And I thought that going and buying one of Tommy Hackenbrook's gyms was going to be that fulfillment. It would allow me to work with a more general population and have a different sort of impact. So I moved back to Salt Lake City with the intention of buying the gym. And at the time, Matt Bruce and I, who is the co-founder of Brute, he and I were doing some programming online for people, like just putting it in this little app, and they would PayPal us some money. And then when I moved back to Salt Lake City, Tommy said, hey, let's rebrand this, use the Ute name, and make this a little bit bigger. And really, man, I did it out of a favor to Matt Bruce, because Matt Bruce had got me the job at LSU, and I felt bad saying, hey, I don't want to do this thing. But in the beginning, I thought it was kind of silly. I didn't think anybody would want to do it. We had a little bit of success doing it on our own, but not very much. And I didn't think that was going to change just because Tommy was a part of it. And so I went to the first Barbell Shrugged Mastermind. And those guys would later become like some of the biggest mentors in my life, business and otherwise. Yeah. And they taught me about systems and marketing and just how to run a business, because I had no idea, man, no idea. And one thing that came out of that is they convinced me to start using social media. I was very against social media, and I was like, I would be on for a year, off for a year, on for a year, off for a year. And I tried Instagram for the first time. And I started the Brute Instagram account, and I just started having fun with it, man. I started like just telling jokes, talking shit. I would do some like inspirational posts every now and then. It was so fun for me, especially because of the joke making part. I could post a big picture of Jake Hutton. Do you know of Jake?
Yeah.
Just this fucking gorilla looking human being, and just give this like hilarious description of why he's cool, and et cetera, et cetera. And what I noticed is that, especially on the inspirational stuff, it was getting a lot of engagement, and that was exciting. Like, it was kind of validating to make these, to continue making these posts. And with the inspirational ones, people, like, what people were saying was it was starting to click with them. Like the things I was talking about, mindset or vulnerability or whatever it may be, it was clicking for them. And I really liked that. I liked that I had the ability to potentially impact thousands of people in a really deep way. Right. And I knew that I was just starting with some Instagram posts, but this light bulb went off in my mind that on the internet, I can impact people all across the world, and I can do it my way. And it doesn't have to be just about fitness. I can talk about all of the things that I love to talk about. And so I think Instagram was the kind of the light bulb moment for me. As much as I dislike social media a lot of times, I do love its ability to reach a ton of people, and there's a lot of good that can be done on there.
Yeah, absolutely. this question just popped into my mind just as you were speaking there and answering that last question. Do you see yourself staying kind of within fitness? Because the sort of sense I get from you is like, you're really getting into this personal growth, development, really empowering others. Like I could see you kind of going more into that sort of motivational speaking, that type of realm. I definitely sense that off you, given too that, your background that you came from with your drug addiction too, and how you overcame that and how you proudly wear that as well, which I want to say 100% respect to the fucking highest degree, because I'm very good friends with Pat Davidson, who would openly say that he had drug addiction issues, and he'd say the best thing that ever happened to him, and he's been able to take his, what he calls his addicted brain, and now use it for like the betterment of himself. In that he's like, right. He has the same addiction to be like the greatest sports scientist, strength and conditioning coach ever that he had when he was a drug addict. He's like, I'm just using it I'm using this drive for a different medium and mode now that's more obviously positively affecting his life and others. So he's like, he just says, there's two sides to that coin. He's like, we spoke about this before. He's like, the addicted brain is a gift. It's what side of the coin you want to use that brain on. And it's the same too with a guy called Luca Hocevar, who are, I think, two guys you'd get on so well with. So I'll definitely introduce you to those boys.
Please do. Yeah, this is the second time we've talked about Pat. Sounds like an awesome dude.
Legend. Because I'm obviously biased because I'm great mates with the man. But is this something maybe that's a seed, maybe just in your mind now, or the back of your mind now, that you might, obviously you'll always have fitness as an element to what you do, but do you think you might go down more this motivational road, or where do you see that going?
Not in the foreseeable future. Okay. I am just so in love with what I'm doing right now. Yeah. I feel so indebted to the fitness community and just to health and fitness in general, because it changed my life. It might have saved my life, because I found CrossFit literally when I had my last relapse, which was the worst drug using experience of my life. And I found CrossFit, and CrossFit NRG in Salt Lake City may have saved my life. It played a huge role in my long-term recovery. And so I feel really indebted to the community. I love it. I still do CrossFit almost every day in my garage. I love so many things about it. And I don't feel very drawn to doing like traditional personal development type stuff, like say Tony Robbins or something like that. But I think that I have some influence in the fitness community. Yeah. And the fitness community needs some personal development work, right? There's a lot of meatheads, and whether that be guys or girls, they want to be happier and live better lives and be more successful. And a lot of us have been taught that it's not okay to show emotion. It's not okay to take some time off to rejuvenate. And I want to be a voice to help those people, because I'm still a meathead, just like all the others. And I think I have a unique position to be able to influence them in a positive way. And so I'm perfectly happy where I am right now. And so I'm just focused on continuing down this path. And again, next chapter, I have no idea, because I'm trying to keep my head down and love what I'm doing in this chapter.
Yeah, I was just about to say you're still in you're still in a chapter as it is right now. Something I've been seeing, just going off what we're talking about there in terms of, you kind of say, the fitness community. It seems that it does need a sort of resource to improve personal development within itself. And a common thing I've been seeing over the last year, maybe 18 months, is a lot of very well-respected people within the whole fitness community. So two people that are coming to mind are Ajay Roberts and Christian Thibodeau, because I've listened to some of these guys in interviews, and they've spoken about their struggles, with their identities within fitness. So like AJ was like, I was using fitness to cover up things that happened to me when I was younger. I was like, if I could make myself bigger and stronger, I'd be like the Hulk, nothing can harm me. And he was just like, I had all these very, detrimental behaviors, and, I ruined relationships. He's like, he was like, he wouldn't go to like family gatherings. He's like, no, I have to train. How dare you ask me? My training's more important. He's like, there was impact on relationships. And then Christian Thibodeau, he did a fantastic interview with Ben Pakulski, and he spoke about like when he first met his wife, and this is before they were married. Like they were just seeing each other, like, and she took like a plane ticket out to go visit him, and like, he was like, he like had to kick her out of the apartment because he was eating a cheat meal, and he's like, I don't want you watching me eating a cheat meal. Like, he was very open about it. And just, a thing I'm seeing is like a lot of people, they're just two guys that come to mind, but a lot of people are starting to come out and talk about like how they nearly used exercise as a coping mechanism, as it was an addiction. They were self-medicating with exercise and identities they'd built to it. So there isn't so much a question here in that I just want to get maybe, your intake. Have you seen that? And then like, have you sort of, because with me, I've been trying to think about like where, and I've asked James this too, like where is that line where like your relationship with exercise is healthy, and then there's a line there where it's like, now it's not healthy. Like, where is that line? It seems to be very hard to sort of tell when like exercise is giving you structure, it makes you a better person. And then at the other end, like, where's that line where like now it's kind of taking over your life, it's getting in the way of relationships. There's that, obviously everyone talks about balance, and obviously it's going to be different for different people. And before I let you like chime in here, I know personally myself that if I just don't get my training and my nutrition's not on point, I'm just not a good person to be around. And like, I remember for a while I felt guilty about that. Like, I need to be more flexible and compromising. And then I was just like, no, like they're my anchors. I'm just like, if I get them in and I get them done, I'm just a better human to be around for the rest of the day.
Yes.
And if I get that done, it's, the day is being successful. Whereas like, I was kind of feeling guilty, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't, I was like, oh, maybe I'm taking it too serious, or maybe I was just like, no, I know if I get that done, everything's better. I have better clarity of thought. I feel better. I'm better to better beat people. So kind of, you ever thought about this? Because it's still an area I'm trying to like, it's still kind of like fuzzy in my mind, if you get what I mean.
I've never thought about where that distinction is, but I've been, as you're starting to ask the question, I'm mulling over it. I was rereading my journal a few days ago, and I came across some from 2013. I had just won the CrossFit Games for the second time with the team, and I had started the job at LSU. And pages and pages and pages. I did not remember, but I was miserable. I was completely miserable. I was, by all accounts, a super successful person. I did great in college. I had this awesome new opportunity at LSU, CrossFit Games winner, etc. And I was miserable. That's because over the years of getting really into competitive fitness, I became really one-sided, right? I put all of my eggs in that basket, and I stopped investing in close relationships. I stopped investing in my mental health, all of these things that, only a few years before had aided in my recovery and a serious amount of happiness and peace of mind. I had stopped doing them. And so back to your question, where's the line? I think it really comes down to what your priorities are. And I think most people are really shitty at identifying their priorities. And the biggest reason is because they don't give themselves the space to identify them, right? They might hear this podcast and go and think about it for a few minutes. Oh, I value courage, and I value integrity, and I value relationships, and I value competing at the CrossFit Games, or whatever it may be. But they don't take the time to write about it, to have deep discussions with people they trust about it. So they don't really know. And so they end up doing what you're saying, which is chasing, I think, achievement, for lack of a better term, like achievement of a certain body composition or winning a competition, etc. And so I think the first step is identify what you value and what your priorities are in this chapter of your life, and then check in with yourself. Are my actions lining up with this value? So let's say you value competitive fitness, relationships, and personal or career development. But if you look at your calendar, have you been just focused on training? Like, how much time are you spending with those closest to you? How much time are you spending on career development? So somebody told me recently that the best way to tell someone's values is to look at their calendar and their checkbook. Where do they spend their time and money? So look back in your past, do an honest assessment of yourself, and ask yourself, do my actions line up with these values? And if they don't, then just take some small steps in the right direction. You don't have to completely change your life, because happiness and fulfillment, I don't think, is ever that far out of our grasp. I think usually we're just like, I don't know, a few small steps away from it. And so check in with yourself. Are you doing what you say you want to do, what you deeply want to do? And then just make your actions line up with that.
Man, that was a brilliant answer. And again, you said that, like, what are your core values and priorities within this current chapter of your life, which again gives people it gives them the freedom to know that, listen, you're dynamic, your core values and priorities will change, again, because you're going to go through different chapters in your life throughout this amazing thing we call the journey of life. But that's kind of where my thought process has gone too. Like, anytime I've ever kind of questioned, like with the exercise addiction sort of question there, is like, is this healthy? Is it not healthy? I've always sort of gone back to, like, all right, first things are first here. What are your core values? What are your current core values, and what are your priorities, and do your behaviors match your core values? I think what happens an awful lot of time is we say these core values, but we don't live them. Like, so here's one that I see all the time. People say, oh, health and wellness, probably up there as the number one core value. And then they go to the gym, Mike, and they're tired, and yet they still train. And then you're like, hold on a second. If you were truly living your core value, you wouldn't be like, I have to train because I have to grind it out. And then there's a conflict, and then there's the whole psychological disturbance going on, like, and then you're not healthy and you're happy because you're going against core value.
Such a great example.
Yeah, I've seen that millions, because I do it myself. I've done it myself. Like, your knees a little bit banged up. I'm still going to squat today, and then you're kind of like, oh, I thought your number one core value was health. That's not really healthy. So, like, yeah, it's just, and listen, I think then there's another voice in my head where, like, you got to step back and say, listen, all this is just part of the journey. Like, every single day we'll always have, like, demons, and we need those demons with us because they teach us great lessons. Like, we're always struggling and wrestling with our own demons on a day-to-day basis, and it's coming to an awareness that, listen, those demons are a gift. They're not a bad thing. They help facilitate more growth in you, and fucking, like I was saying earlier on to you about, like, the drug addiction, and with Pat, wear that shit, like embrace that, because that makes you who you are. And I think they're very, very important things to keep in mind. Listen, I know I don't want to keep you too much longer, but there's a few more questions here. You think we have another about 10, 15 minutes? You're on the half? Yeah. So we'll keep you, because you're a man. Mike, just for listen, very punctual, like bang on the half hour today. He was like, boom. I loved it.
Haven't always been that way either.
Yeah, listen, it's a work in progress. I'm the same, bud. I'm the same. Your biggest lessons, Mike, you've learned, and this can be one or it can be, 2 or 3, but what would you say have been the biggest lessons you've learned so far in your life? Sorry, I know that's a big question.
Did I bring this up last time? The relationship with yourself and others?
You could have. We spoke about so much.
I feel like I did.
I haven't had a chance to do it.
I think I did, so I'll give another answer to start out. I think my number one value in life is courage. And my definition of courage has really changed over the years. I used to think courage was, I had this image of a warrior like Mel Gibson in Braveheart or something like that, or the Gladiator, right? Usually just a warrior. And I used to think that courageous people have no fear. But what I've learned is that courage is taking an action in the presence of fear. If you're not feeling afraid, then it's not courage. And the reason that that's so important to me is because courage is the essential ingredient to getting what you want in life, which is taking risks and going for what you want, even though you're not maybe competent or confident about it right now, which we're probably never going to be that when we're just starting out in any endeavor. It's the essential ingredient in building trust in relationships. It is the essential ingredient in developing ourself and developing a better relationship with ourself. And so I've identified this as my highest core value, because if I can show courage, then every single area of my life immediately gets better. I stand up for myself. I stand up for other people. I connect with people. I can have more influence over people. I can take risk in the direction of big goals that I set for myself. And it's just badass because I still do have this image of, I might not be going to war, but I'm a warrior of some sort, I feel.
How do you learn? And to make that a more specific question, there's a topic you really want to understand in depthly. Take us through the process.
I like to get obsessed with stuff, man. I'm trying to develop patience. I'm really trying to develop patience, but I've got a long way to go. And so I like to get obsessed with things and really I like to start experimenting with things as quickly as possible. I love to read, love to listen, but I don't learn very well there. I don't comprehend a ton. I learn best when, I'll take programming, for example. I read so many CrossFit Journal articles and Testosterone Nation and Mike Boyle and Poliquin articles online. And I learned, let's say 3% of what I know about strength and conditioning. When I started programming for people and having that constant feedback loop of what's working, what's not, it felt like my head was exploding. I was learning so quickly. Yeah. I love to dive in and physically start doing things as quickly as possible. And it's often the scariest to start doing, especially in the beginning, but you got to do it at some point. And I find that that's the best way to learn, because you start being able to give yourself feedback, notice what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, give yourself feedback. You'll get feedback from others. And then it all starts to then you start to be able to dive specifically into one area of weakness, rather than just learning about strength and conditioning or kinesiology in general and trying your best to hold it all in your head. And it's all kind of abstract. When you identify someone can't do a bodyweight squat, then you dive into that one area. What are all the possible reasons for this? And so you develop a sense of competency around one area of that endeavor. That's how I like to do it.
Great. Yeah, it's a great answer, bud. I don't know if you noticed or if I told you, I used to work at Mike Boyle's.
You did. I forgot about that, though.
That's so cool, man. I interned and worked there. Myself and Mike are great mates.
The joint by joint, but no, it was an article.
Yeah.
Joint by joint article was literally one of the most game-changing things I learned as a strength coach.
Yeah, the story behind that's gas. He was just sitting at a breakfast or lunch with Gray Cook, and then Gray was like, "Yeah, the body's easy. It just alternates in joints." And Mike ran off, got his notebook, came out and said, "Say that again."
That's so funny.
Wrote the article, yeah. What is one thing that you do every day that is essential to your day? If there is one thing.
I go to sleep early. And going to sleep early for me is a lead domino habit, or some people will call it a keystone habit. Because when I go to sleep early, it has a chain reaction. If I go to sleep at, say, 9 p.m., then I automatically and effortlessly wake up around 5:30 or 6 a.m. Then I have 90 minutes to do this really kick-ass morning routine that I love. And then I have a lot of working hours to get all of my shit done. And then I go into the day very proactive and doing things intentionally, rather than what I used to do, which was go to sleep late, wake up late, and rush immediately into work, feeling reactive, answering emails and answering phone calls and getting on meetings and stuff, and never feeling like I was able to create and be really productive, right? We talked about deep work earlier. I was constantly in shallow work, just doing just very menial tasks that kind of busy work all the time. Simply by going to sleep earlier, I have time to do this really awesome thing in the morning and then be proactive throughout the rest of my day.
There's a great presentation by the sprint coach Stu McMillan, who will be a mentor of mine too, because I interned at Altus. And in one of his presentations, he was like, my coaching day starts the night before. And he's like, when
Yes.
when I prioritize and get all my stuff together and I get to bed early. So that always resonated with me too. I'm also I'm an absolute sleep nut. I've been that way since 2010, because the biggest change I made in my health was sorting out my circadian rhythms. And just for the listeners, me and Mike are on video here, and Mike can see I'm wearing my blue blocking glasses. So
Yes.
I love circadian rhythms and circadian biology. I think it's fascinating. It probably is going to be something I will do my master's thesis around, in terms of like circadian biology and performance or skill acquisition. I have 4 more questions to get in, and we've 8 minutes or 7 minutes. So if we don't get them in, I can always get you to answer them on like an email. I'll stick them in the show notes.
Perfect.
What would your top resource be to all the listeners? And it just could be just anything: a book, a podcast, a person, a course. Like one thing that you think would positively impact people's lives.
The book Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. I said courage was my number 1, and this is on the power of vulnerability. So it's a phenomenal book. I recommend. It's my most gifted book ever. The second one would be, you know what? I've done a lot of podcasts with a lot of like kind of famous fitness people.
Yeah.
You know what podcasts get the most engagement out of our audience?
Well, this personal development ones probably.
Close. The ones that I do on relationships
with a
no shit, man. Like 3 to 5 times as much engagement as I get with people with millions of followers.
I've been listening to them, by the way. I love the sex episode. It was great.
Hell yeah. So the reason I brought that up is the second resource would be read The Way of the Superior Man. It is a very uniquely written book. It's kind of woo-woo, but if you can not take yourself too seriously, allow yourself to read it, it can be life-changing. It's one of the best books. I think it's the best relationship book I've ever read. And I think people are dying for that type of information. They're dying to have deeper, meaningful relationships. And this is a great resource for that.
James recommends that book. James Fitzgerald, he loves that book, The Way of the Superior Man. You actually answered one of the next questions, which was your book recommendation. But just following on from that, what are you currently reading? So that's your top. What are you currently reading right now?
2 books. I'm reading From Darwin to Munger, which is a book on mental models. Great book.
Wow.
And then I'm listening to Musashi.
Oh, 5 Rings? 5 Rings?
No, the one about his life, the story, it's a 50-hour Audible book. Well, so I'm listening to that.
Gonna get that. Savage.
Fucking like best story ever. It's so good.
For whatever reason, these are our last 2 now. For whatever reason, you have 1 year left on planet Earth. How would you spend that year, and why?
I would spend the majority of it with very close friends and family. And I would just write. I would do that. While I'm doing that, I would spend a lot of time writing just things that I've learned. Everything that I've learned in life and how to live the happiest life possible. And then I think I would do some adventures. I would backpack a good bit. I would be outdoors as much as possible. And I would take some epic adventures. And the reason why? So I think I said on the last podcast that one of my highest priorities is to develop the relationship with myself and others. And I just feel most alive and happy when I am surrounded by people that I deeply care about. So that's why I would spend that time with them. And I also feel alive when I'm completely disconnected from technology. I'm in nature. I'm doing something very difficult. So I'm hiking, up to 14,000 feet with a heavy pack. I don't know. I just tap in. If I'm not a very spiritual person, but that's the closest I get to having that feeling of awe and like there's something greater than us at play here that I just don't understand yet or will ever understand. So that's why I would do that.
I'm in the same club, brother. I'm in the same club. Last one. I'm bringing you for dinner, and you can bring 5 people to dinner, dead or alive. Who would you bring to this dinner and why? And Adi doesn't count, by the way. And I bet you Adi told you about this question.
She did.
I knew it.
She did. She said she wasn't supposed to, but she did. And I gave it some thought already.
Good.
So
good. Well, we're short in time, so you needed the thought.
Yeah, it would be Seth Godin.
Sweet.
Joe Rogan, Benjamin Franklin.
Nice.
He might be number one, honestly.
Such an interesting guy, that guy. Adi had Seth Godin and Joe Rogan on her one. She probably told you anyway.
Definitely. I think one would be Scott Harrison, who's the CEO of Charity Water.
Oh.
You know Charity Water?
No, I don't.
They are making an enormous dent in the worldwide problem of thirst.
Wow.
People not having fresh water. They are so rapidly diminishing the amount of people on earth that don't have access to fresh water. And his mission is to completely eliminate that as a problem. I think that's fucking badass. It's a nonprofit, and that is one of the most badass things to take on in your life. And so I would love to meet him.
You've one more?
One more. Shit, man.
That's a good dinner so far, by the way.
Yeah. Marcus Aurelius.
Oh.
Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who led in one of the craziest, war-ridden times of all time. And yet he wrote some of the best Stoic philosophy, not even trying to be a philosopher, but just trying to remind himself to live a life of, being kind and not taking himself too seriously or being vain. I think he was from what I've read about him, one of the best leaders of all time. Brilliant.
Mike, you got to go. I appreciate you so much, my man. And just let me say, I love you. I really do love you.
I love you, brother.
Yeah, and appreciate these 2 episodes, 2 conversations. I know you got to go. So to everyone listening, thank you for your earbuds. We're out. Peace.